Hello.
There we are.
There we are.
Talking
Didn't
about
ex-
AI today.
I didn't expect us to have another AI topic so soon. So,
But here we are.
so
I
it's a
mean,
little
if
bit
it
like,
if it sells, it sells. No, our religion.
well, good. How are you doing? How are you doing?
Oh, busy, busy. So I just came back last week from an on-site, doing some. Every team that I'm with always does some form of like continuous reorg, just trying to get the team structures right, trying to get the incentives right, and there's always this looming conversation. Executives usually want to have a conversation about AI, but it in some form sort of feels a little bit agendaless often. They just want to see if there's any kind of productivity boost that we might be leaving on the table. um, and my experience with AI is that there is no such thing as a free boost. Like it does require um, deliberate planning and a sort of more catered approach. My concern, however, is that that same planning, that same approach, that same discipline is already necessary for your leadership, for your presence, for your craft, even though I know you don't like that word, um, just for the whole engineering process in itself. And if that's not present, if that wasn't present pre AI, it won't magically manifest. So that's a difficult conversation.
And I think that most engineers I was talking with in recent weeks were all about the same that you just said. It's like, it's an amplifier.
Hmm.
You need to know what you actually do there. And the idea of that, I think that when we last year started to think about or discuss heavily what AI will be, the replacement or not, or something like that, the first perspective was way too high because of the terminology. The term of vibe coding was so influential about the idea of what AI actually is that we weren't focusing very early on what it can actually do.
Hmm.
And this is helping to make things actually yes easier in several ways, as
Hmm.
long as we have something to make it easier. So because how to set up your application, how to run it, how to develop it, in which direction to develop it, everything which is based on experience, judgment, these kind of things, or um, discernment, these kind of things, they are not for the AI, and AI is not
Hmm.
good in those. And because it pretends, the problem with ChatGPT, for example, it's a big pretender. So judgment is pretended there,
Hmm.
which I really dislike. That's one of the things I dislike
Hmm.
about
Hmm.
ChatGPT. It is like you ask a question, and there's judgment in this question, even though it's just a pattern, right? So there is no human judgment behind that. And software development is a lot about that, even though we don't see that. But it is a practice we do with people for people, and the feedback comes from people again. So everything we do in terms of ownership, how we develop it, in terms of quality, NFRs, everything we define there is based on this relationships between people, and the result of that is business, of course, but the business between people. And that is what AI simply cannot do, won't be able to do. And we should this year, and that would be a big relief to not talk too much about that exact topic anymore. That I think it's established. I
Yeah.
think that there are not so many people actually saying that there is not this AI replaces us faction and the
Hmm.
AI will disappear faction. I think they finally disappear slowly but steady because I couldn't hear it
Like
anymore.
I wouldn't attribute it to like the hallucinations. I think we got like I did. I got the root cause wrong very early on. Right? So the way the browser interfaces were configured of ChatGPT, of Gemini, of Cursor, the browser interfaces were generally configured to have predominantly the temperature setting and a few more internals that oriented towards English conversation, right? So what I'm alluding to is that the big jump in AI usage was made when we got closer to that Copilot length, right? So with the Copilot, the most annoying thing is when it gives me a 5-line suggestion, right? Like it's like 5 lines. When it just completes the line, no problem, because it's like I can read it, ignore it, or use it, right? So I can predict what I'm going to write. So early on in using the clients for the AIs, not even the models, just the clients that sort of made the models user facing, it was almost impossible to get a short answer, right? So it's like, hey, I'm writing some piece of code. What is the next sensible step? It was impossible. GPT-3, 3.5, the early Claude models, it was impossible to just get one line of C++ from it.
Mhm.
It wanted to have a conversation. It wanted to give you suggestions. It always went out of its way to be helpful, and that was super annoying. And I think I and many others just gave up on this idea of getting short answers. And getting short answers from a high confidence but extremely conservative answer, that is what's necessary for it to be helpful in the normal coding loop, right? So if you can't get it to do a short answer, it needs to do multiple steps of a short answer with you in a way that you can observe. And I think from what I've observed from Andrea's work, from Paul Hammond's work, Brian Finster, Sam Hatum from Zolvio, from AutoOn, they're all leaning towards this approach of, I don't want to vibe code. I don't want it to one-shot a giant answer for me. I want to control the sort of innermost generation of, I wanted to work with you line by line, behavior by behavior, test by test, to sort of replicate that small step that we got to know from manual coding as TDD. And it's the reining in of the output, of getting a client that automates the reining in of the output, that's been so powerful I think in the last 6 months. And not so much the models getting better. It's just that interfacing. It's just because you remember how annoying it was to get the M dashes and that's right, and the inverse sentence structure of AI. The problem with AI is not this, it's that. It's like these words, like it's what it was trained on to be, to be a good example of English written text, and it just keeps talking like that because it's what it was trained on. But to rein it in a way that is practical for a small step, I think that's where we went wrong. We thought that it would be impossible to rein it in, so we just have to work with that large output. And I think that's where we started emphasizing vibe coding more in early 2025. And providers, maybe even Antigravity now, but predominantly Anthropic, predicted correctly that automating the reining in of that and giving developers more power on how to automate and what it's reining in, and maybe it's not reining in on size, maybe it's reining in on file or context or decision making or talking to another agent. That has been super powerful and eye-opening lately. Because I would love to use it that's like, hey, just give me a new title for this ticket. I don't want it to hallucinate and give me a long title. Just give me the autocomplete stuff. Like, give me that Copilot ability and just help me summarize and increase the density of information, not just dump text in my face.
For me, auto-completion isn't a big thing anymore. I don't think I use it. I use, when it comes to coding, actually only Claude Code. So
Yeah.
I either say that do it or let it be. Let's say I need to decide who is the writing person. So Claude Code or me. but there's nothing in between.
Yeah.
So it's not like, yeah, just give me the next 10 lines and I'll do the rest. Why? So if I don't trust in AI that it
Yeah.
can do the work, I don't use it. That's simple. And that's where Anthropic actually, they were the first to really shine with a solution that convinced even the skeptical persons. We saw examples where streams about that, with guests about that. And it was for me still this video I made back then. I was so stunned about what actually happened there, and that
Yeah,
was
I
the
remember.
moment, that was for me the moment. Even though there were most other people were skeptical about that, so I was really daring.
Yeah, because that was the moment when Devon launched, right? So there was that huge rock pull that was caused by Devon, and then I think the whole Devon situation also delayed what is now called Codex, right? So that created like this huge trust issue with such products, and it also raised the question of, should we even do this through the web interface? And the answer was no. Okay, but if it's not the web interface, then what? CLI, pull requests. Let's use the tools that were already there naturally. So the community split. Like some of the products went into the automated pull request area, notably Copilot on GitHub, and then there were some tools that went into the IDE space of CLI or voice or IDE plugin, and that just took a few quarters of experimentation to get the interface right. And I like where the CLI interface is going, and especially this command interface of, I can have tools, I can have skills, I can have agents, I can have guards. That I think it's going in the right direction. So it's getting better, ironically. I didn't expect us to have such a large jump. But sadly, that's not what the executives want to talk about. The executives that come to me for, hey, how do we push AI? I think it's coming more about this, hey, is there, the market is telling me there is free productivity to be had and we're not taking advantage of it. It's that conversation. And it's a weird conversation because there was a lot of free productivity available to you that did not require AI. That there was things that you can do.
There still are.
And then still are in your leadership structure, in your department hierarchy, in your silos, in your communication style. There are a lot of things that are real bottlenecks, that are bigger bottlenecks, that have nothing to do with coding.
That's actually the crux about that. So
Yeah.
you want to have the productivity boost, let's say, of 20% of AI, and then you need to implement first the 50% productivity boost in old patterns we already developed, right?
Yeah.
And you don't do the 50% because why? But if AI is there, the 20%, of course you do the 50%, right? Makes sense to have then the 20%.
But that's weird. And now I do entertain these conversations. I always entertain them, because I can see how they are an open door towards that bigger 50% chunk, which is operate. Look, I can give you a good example. So there was this discussion last year, I think it was October, about introducing AIs on the project management level. Let's introduce AI on the project management level. What happened? Slack threads and AI summaries were being used to generate tickets, and the AIs got overambitious. The agents got overambitious, and now every ticket kind of looked the same, and it was 7 pages. Right? So problem number 1, nobody reviewed those. Problem number 2, the prompts weren't being improved. Problem number 3, the AIs were not getting feedback. And problem number 4, the engineers were just using other AIs to then summarize that ticket because they were too long. And once they saw how much tokens that was eating up from both ends, they stopped doing that altogether and stopped using the project management tool. Which is an interesting, That is not what the exec had in mind. And that was a 3-week experiment, right? And I was looking at that experiment from this perspective of, obviously that's what happened. It's like if you think about it, if you like war game out such a small tactic on on the bookkeeping of project management, obviously that's what's going to happen, right? Because I see this pushed. Atlassian is pushing features like this. Salesforce is pushing these kinds of features. Microsoft is pushing these kinds of features. Google in the workspace domain is pushing these kinds of features. But obviously, this is what it results in if you just lightly let it have free reign and you don't really work with it. Because ultimately, it requires a change in pace. For this particular example, what I suggested was, rather than treating the agent as something that can update tickets and rephrase tickets and write tickets, use it as an assistant, but don't assume that it can write tickets on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Just use them as an assistant of, hey, combine this Slack thread with that Slack thread and give me a 2-line summary. And then you take the 2-line summary and then you put it into the correct ticket. Right? So use it that way. Use it as an assistant, but don't assume that it knows exactly what your role entails. Or this ticket needs to be split. Don't assume the AI knows how it needs to split it. Right? This was done, that was not done. Help me reframe this ticket given that was done. Close one, open the other. Right? Work with it. Use it as a process automation tool and not as a autonomous agent that is just dumping text. I think where a lot of teams go wrong is that AIs are amazing for compression. There's a lot of text here, help me get it down. Help me make it fit my head. Or if it doesn't fit, help me navigate it. Oftentimes I read a book with AI and I say, I'm interested in this topic. That's why I'm reading the book. Highlight the chapters which have most of that information. And it generates a dynamic index that sort of guesses where what I would need is in the book, which is super helpful to me. Right, so it's compressing down information, makes it available to me, and then I validate. Okay, that's actually correct. That's actually useful. Thank you. All right, so vibe coding is the inverse of that. Vibe coding would be, I have this task, please finish it for me, and then it just splurges code all over the screen, and then you waste your time code reviewing that. I think a lot of engineers entertain way too much slop, as in too large output, too large dump. The reviewing, the gating, the step should all be automated, to be reined in constantly so that it doesn't produce. I've noticed a lot of project specs, a lot of tech specs lately across quite a few teams that I'm coaching. People have started using Cloud Code in planning mode and just dumping the planning mode document as Markdown into a feature spec. So I started seeing 2 organizations that are completely unrelated. I am the only connecting link with similar format. So I recognize it to be Cloud Code planning format, the Markdown planning format that Cloud Code produces. And they've been starting using that in feature specs. I find that lazy. And I find it to be a little bit inaccurate in what it hallucinates up sometimes. So that's what I noticed. So that's the good stuff and the bad stuff on that.
It's not the bad stuff. It's the beginning of the good stuff.
Okay, I like that phrasing. Yes, I like that phrasing.
So people realize it was the very same thing with vibe coding. So the original meaning of vibe coding is not what we do with Cloud Code today. So that is, agentic coding, what we basically do today. But the idea of vibe coding is we don't even see CLI. We just have a voice interface and doing the
original idea with vibe coding was that you don't need to be an engineer.
Exactly. Right? So you can just, explain your wishes and it's
yes.
Today we have found a good middle way. And the same is with the people now find new ways to do things which they haven't really done beforehand. So specifications they were done, but not always. Many teams worked with a specification in the size of a small ticket with half-baked sentences based on a Jira template.
Yes,
right?
yes,
And
yes.
that's their
expanding
specification.
too much. Yeah.
And then because they were so lazy, they actually had a coffee somewhere to discuss it, do it next week and forget what they've discussed, and just
Yes.
that was specification, what I saw in the entire industry. And now we have it that AI is doing the hard lifting, writing down, wrapping up things, compressing things. I think we are simply not there yet. It is now the feedback loop we have started. It is very rough on the edges. It still has a lot of gaps because we don't see them. But I'm 100% sure that in 1 year from now, we see that as a standard practice. By the way, I'm doing it myself. And the more you precise, so it is this, for me, it's currently this big game of stacking context. So you have base context, then you have a context built upon that, and then you have specific contexts, which you actually work on right now. And if you do it right, it becomes significantly better and less hallucinating. Yet still, you need to read through these kind of things in the final version. That's one of the things is what I saw is that testing, even though we have now something which could actually help us testing, people tend to test less and trust more. So the better code becomes, the more the people trust into what this actually is doing. So that what we would like to have had in last year, now I see that happen.
We have some Substack comments, but timing isn't the right one yet. Let's give it 5 more minutes of what we're talking about now.
More boiling.
Yeah. No, because we're cooking in the right direction. Do you think that this is a client side issue or a product side issue?
A human issue.
I mean, is it on the consumer side, do you think? Like
because I think is the consumer for you the developer?
No, because I think Opus and the Cloud Code interface, I think we're there. I think this is a fairly reasonable setup that we have right now, and the consumer side just needs to catch up. Like we just now need to get used to using these tools.
Okay, now I know what you. Okay.
Or do you mean that, or do you think that there is some MCP level or even lower infra level tooling that Cloud Code and Anthropic needs to develop for us? Because I think tooling wise we're kind of there.
For to be honest, I really like how ChatGPT evolved with projects. I use them heavily for my.
Really?
Yeah, I use them. Very.
Okay. Wait, how is that connected to what I just asked?
So maybe I just get the context in which you are right now. Not.
No, I mean Cloud Code specifically. Like, do you think we need more?
I think Cloud Code is
fundamental infra features than what we currently have.
I think that Cloud Code itself is where it should be. It is like it was already last year. It just got better.
Yeah,
it's a little bit like the typical macOS design thing. It was good. And it just keeps becoming a little bit better every time.
Yeah, so I'm still worried about. I forgot the correct wording, but the attack vector of escaping the enclosure of the AI, right? So if I tell you, okay, you're not allowed to read this, or you're not allowed to touch that, or you can run this tool, there is still that attack vector of some external information injecting itself. So for example, if you ask ChatGPT to, not ChatGPT, but for example, if Cloud Code has access to your hard drive and you ask it to read something from the web, that website can inject a prompt that can then escape your context to do remote code execution. And those attack vectors have been like the 40% of all reported large security, like remote code.
I never have done something like that myself. I always wonder how people actually doing that. Maybe it's specific to how I work, but everything what I do happens inside the repository, not outside. I never asked to actually research something, and somehow every kind of maybe some npm package size that could have been the case.
But controlling your browser is, like that's enough. Like that's the, even if it just has Playwright control, it can still take control of the browser and look at your managed.
I never gave control, or I
know,
don't use
but
MCP.
it's a very slippery slope. Like it's not a wall. It's just a little piece of glass in between the two contexts.
I think it's not necessary currently, at least for me, even in front end. It's not necessary that the browser is actually seeing the output, because that's still your job as a front end person. And that is a good litmus test as well to see actually what happens there and to stay there. I don't want that a machine is building the entire solution there, like your 3D printer. I'm still there. I want to understand what actually happens there, because in a 3D printer, you have created the idea to the fullest in the beginning. You have a plan, and it's basically worked out. And it's not the same with software development. So I want to still be part of the process, the vibe, right? I want to have to see the flow. I want to have these kind of things. I want to feel it. I want to understand it. So when I go next day into the same area, I still want to know, why are the things looking like that? Right? And that was what we definitely had when we built everything ourselves. We had a very good feeling for code structure and infrastructure and architecture. And if you do it wrong with AI, you completely lose it. And this is where I think we should be there. So regards of what AI tools like Claude Code, which is definitely the best one right now, is providing us with a CLI, it's very good. I know that, for example, my business partner always asks me, hey, have you tested in JetBrains the integration of Claude Code into the UI right now? So there's a UI integration, so you don't need to use CLI anymore.
I mean, it's still a CLI, but it integrates into the CLI of the IDE.
Yeah, and I haven't even took a look at it. I don't
know.
Good.
It's okay. It's okay. It's the same thing as with the test runners. All of the test runners are CLI runners, but it sort of integrates into the native CLI that gives you buttons, rather than having the raw terminal CLI.
If I can work in a raw CLI, and I don't have any problems with that, and I can just describe it by typing, I have done everything right.
It's just ergonomics. It can imply context from what you might have selected on the screen, or
it does anyway. So it is, even though it is, there's an internal MCP automatically set up. And I don't know if it always happens, but definitely happens when you start the shell session inside the IDE.
Yes, it does. Yes.
And so it is actually very easy. It became very easy to work with that. The error rate is so low, but especially the detection rate of issues and these kind of things is so damn good these days.
Yeah, Opus 4.5 is, I'm quite happy with the output. I mean, I don't default to it in the sort of vibing style that I used to, but for reasonably small requests, it's reasonably reliable. You just gotta rein it in.
I just see that we get notification, get comments, and they are lost because Restream isn't transferring them today.
Really?
Yeah, Maria. Hello, Maria.
Maybe we didn't connect them correctly.
We did, but I've done that now 3 times last week, and they were working every time. Today is the day. Maybe in your chat, but in my event,
hello, Maria,
it doesn't work. Don't know.
Okay.
So sorry, guys, if we don't see.
So how about you monitor your channel, I'll monitor my channel, and
yeah, maybe we should answer Blaze.
Yeah, let's answer Blaze.
Hello, Blaze. Nice to see you again. That's a Substack one now. Across healthcare, fashion, and institutions like the Vatican, what's the common pattern of AI disruption, and who will be left behind if they don't adapt?
There must be some context there that I'm not picking up on, or this is maybe a little bit of AI generated.
I don't bring the Vatican together with AI. Vatican is still speaking Latin. Not any modern language.
I don't know. You want to answer that question?
I don't. To be honest, I don't really understand the question. What's the common pattern of AI disruption? So it's a common pattern in healthcare, fashion, institutions.
So I don't think anybody's getting left behind. I think I keep voicing this joke this joke on Reddit and on similar platforms where we keep having this discussion, which is, AI providers tell you that, oh, this model is now fully capable of doing everything a software engineer is. And then the fine print requires a software engineer to operate model. It's like that. Yeah, it can replace a software engineer, but you need a software engineer to operate the model to make sure that it's working correctly, right? So it doesn't really. Yes, it replaces one engineer, but I needed to replace two in order to be beyond replacement.
What I definitely can say about AI disruption right now is that the AI definitely disturbed everything. It is there, it happened, but it mostly happened in the past. So what I see right now is that there isn't that much of disruption anymore. Right now, people really thinking about how can we use it, mostly not in the correct ways, but they started to think now. So there is not much doubt about it anymore, because as I said in my last stream, it's like that even grandmothers and grandfathers are now using AI, even though they have never used really the internet. So the doubt into AI is not really there anymore. We have skepticism, security concerns. Are we becoming too dependent, and is it really real? Those kind of things are still there, but in terms of disruption, it's over. 2025 was the dawn and the big disruption thing. Everyone was polarized, but over the Christmas weeks, in my opinion, people settled down and silently accepted it is there, because it was still there when they came back. It wasn't a nightmare. It's reality, and there is nothing which is actually more interesting right now in terms of society when it comes to tech than AI. Then I think that we are talking now more about an acceptance phase. We have accepted it as a society. There are exceptions to the acceptance, but it is widely accepted. And now we will see different ways of coping with it, moving forward, as Dennis said. So there are executives looking for, how can I improve, because they see numbers, key metrics, and their reports.
Speaking of numbers, Blaze is a good follow-up question. So I think we can jump onto that one.
Let's suppose my company's repository has 100 issues. Will AI tools increase the number of issues or decrease it to 0?
I think that question, like that sentiment, is where a lot of execs are coming from, right? So I just have this backlog.
Should we talk about Windows 11?
No, we shouldn't talk about Windows 11. No. That's silly. So let's not talk about Microsoft's obvious financial problems with AI adoption. That's a separate. They'll figure it out. The question is not so much. Let's say you have I imagine GitHub repo with 100 issues, right? So you have a full backlog. Can an AI just reason about the backlog and autonomously fix all the issues and make the issues go away? And I would say no, that's not possible. I would say that's, if you do that, it's possible that you will have to spend more or the equivalent amount of human resources just to review what it did, just to break even. If somebody was actively involved in reducing the number of issues, potentially they could benefit on that 20% range that Adrian was talking about. But ultimately this comes down to a upstream versus downstream problem. You got to ask yourself, the correct approach here would be, why does your company have 100 issues in its repo? So the issues were already put in, and there is a bug rate in your repo, in your team, and that team is currently working on something, and whatever they're working on is being done with the same habits, with the same culture, and they will continue producing the same bugs at the same rate, and you're trying to speed up how fast you close them and fix them, rather than talk to the people who are putting the bugs into the system. Right? So from my perspective, there's no point trying to like increase the rate at which you're pouring the water out of the boat if there's a hole. And where I am most interested in and sort of finding use cases and researching use cases for AI adoption is helping engineers be more disciplined. But it starts with the engineer. You said your company's repository has 100 issues. Will AI tools increase the number of issues or decrease it to 0? On some level, this communicates, I don't trust my engineers. Maybe the AI can do a better job. And that's the conversations I have with executives primarily about AI. It's like, can AI do a better job than my engineers? And fundamentally, that just speaks of a lack of leadership, trust, maybe some pessimism, or some level of impatience. Let's say let's set everything else aside and let's just deal with the impatience. Well, impatience has to do with prioritization, right? So you have prioritized, I don't know, output of features more than quality, and that's why you have 100 issues in your repo. AI won't solve that unless that is what you task AI with. It's like,
Well,
okay,
I would say that AI done right will decrease it because it helps you. AI can find the
it
reason for an
decreases
issue before
this
you start with the
it
issue.
decreases this batch of 100, but there will be another batch of 100 after it.
Yeah, it doesn't reduce it to 0 magically. So
Yes,
it just
yes.
shortens the time until you actually work them down. So you will be faster working down the issues. You still need to do that as a human being.
Yeah.
You still need to validate that the actual issue is solved and no others are actually coming up. You need to have still your manual acceptance test, even though you're test automating. These kind of things need still be done. So is it acceptable as a human being what you actually see there? Judgment, right? Discernment.
I think the use case, not trying to dodge your question, Blaze, but will the AI tool increase the number of issues or decrease it to 0? I think decreasing it to 0 is, the chances of that are 0. Like, it's not going to decrease it to 0 without human intervention. Like, it will require a human operator, but it can increase the number of issues because you can actually use AI to look for issues, right? So AIs are very good at compression, and looking for issues is a compression task, right? So you can give it the full context of the entire project. By the way, that's going to be super expensive. Putting your entire large project into an AI and having it ultra think around it is a lot of tokens, but it can find issues. But it's much more efficient if you look for issues in pull requests, because it's more token efficient. It's much more economical on that. Right, so there's a pull request, and you analyze the pull request with
It
AI.
is the same as when we do continuous delivery and these kind of things. Stay in your context right now, where you are in right now, refactor that one, optimize. This is what I do very often. It's like when I solve an issue, I have anyway used AI for this. Where's the issue? How does it came to be? I'm looking myself, but most often the AI is faster. And then I ask, do you see anything else which could cause in this context any more issues? Have we overlooked a race condition, a possible one? Is there some logic error or something
that is productive? Yes.
Yeah. And then really like be critical, really asking, be critical, and then don't fix it. It's not like accept mode. It is like planning mode. Give me possible things.
Yes.
And I decide if I actually want to, because many times it's like, I can fix this, but by fixing that, you basically fix something which never was a problem, and suddenly it becomes one. Because we're talking about technologies, web technologies, they are not 100% deterministic in every browser and these kind of things. Also, so you need to decide if that should be tackled.
Also, this is a tech channel, and we keep talking about technology, and we're focusing on the hard skills of coding skills of an AI. But please, if you're a software engineer, your primary concern should be various biases and assumptions in project management and soft skills. And the LLMs actually happen to be good at that. So if you struggle writing an email to somebody because you struggle communicating with them, have the AI rephrase the email, and have it rephrase emails in a softer tone, or in a more assertive tone, or maybe you babble too much. Just help it shorten down your review or your report, or your don't ask it to write it for you to expand it, but it's very good at rephrasing or shortening. So if you want to improve your soft skills and you're in a primarily remote environment, please use it for that. Right? Grammar check your commits, grammar check your messages, your ticket updates. It's very useful for that. Don't just lean on it for the hard skills. For the hard skills, it's good, but it requires a sort of senior plus level understanding of your software engineering process. But for the nitty gritty stuff of communicating with other people, just use it for that. Use you want to have a meeting. Somebody sent you a meeting request, and there's no agenda, and then there's a Google Doc in it. Have Gemini or a equivalent AI, go look over the document and recommend an agenda, and maybe put it into the meeting notes. Right? So it's just use a little bit of finesse that comes from these tools to fill the gaps on the more obvious things rather than the hard skills for which you were employed. Like, use it as an assistant. Coding and design and architecture will still be in your domain. You don't need to write the code, right? Like, the AI is fully capable of writing every single line of code if you can correctly explain what it is you're building. No problem. In small enough steps, because I like this. Who was it? I don't know. I think it was John. I don't know how to pronounce his name. John Ho Osterhout. I don't know. Osterhout. They recently had in the past year, last year, him and Uncle Bob had like a back and forth regarding clean code and TDD. And what I really like is that they had a really high level, deep thinking human conversation about how they disagreed, where they disagreed. And their conversation was captured by AI, was refined by AI. They even did it themselves. And now it's actually like a book level good analysis philosophically about software engineering practices. And Paul Hammond did something similar. Brian Finster did something similar. Use it for that. Also, what I saw is, I really like this analogy that human or AI, you're not vibe coding fundamentally in your brain. You are working one line at a time. So just interface at that level. Just work one line at a time. Like you as a human being, yes, I'm designing, but you're still writing one line at a time, right? Like, even though it's in your head, it's still manifesting into the computer one line at a time. Like, you can't just splurge it out and say, I want this thing. And even if you're speaking one line at a time. You might be describing it, but if you're describing it and you want to cheat by just explaining the architecture, or have a diagram and you dump the diagram inside, that's just cheating for expansion. But if you want to be productive, just use it for compression. Just say, okay, I'm writing this, simplify it down. I'm writing this, simplify it down. Help me out. Help me write the next line. My recommendation is always, here's an email, help me rephrase and reorder it so it's easier to read. Here's my code, help me rephrase and order it so it's easier to read. You rejoined or left, but you just sent me a message that you...
That happened the days before as well with Restream. Somehow it disconnects me and connects me right away again. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, but you give me a ping that you have to go in 8 minutes.
But that wasn't related. Actually.
Waffle. That was a waffle signal. See. Anyway, TLDR, regardless of the interface, regardless of the strength of the AI, regardless of the model, you as a human being, if we're talking about text, communication through text, or coding, you're still working one line at a time. So just use the tool one line at a time and optimize that process, the innermost loop, and use it well, rather than trying to one-shot vibe code like huge steps, a huge report or a PhD dissertation or a huge chart. And then, it's like, there is this huge chart, please vibe code it for me. And then you spend an hour correcting one detail on it, and then you fix the detail, and then you ask it to do something else, and then it screws up that detail again, and you keep trying to get control on. No, just work. Use a version control. Say, okay, stop touching this. What I like to do recently in Cloud Code is use rewind. You rewind back to history. You have it forget. I stopped using compression and context dumping, and I just say, here's my code, here's what I'm working on, help me, here's where we are, help me this. And then it fixes it, there's new code, and then I say, okay, now rewind, forget that I told you, and then the new output is what we have, and then I say, okay, now this is what I'm working on, help me figure it out. Because it's not learning. Because it's not learning anyway, right? Like, I'm not training it. I'm not helping it do supervised learning or do deep learning. So any kind of context that I give once I have localized it to one file is a distraction. So I just say, okay, here's my file, here's what I'm working on, help me with this line. Okay, cool. Now forget that. Let's go back. And I mean, you don't get the tokens back, but you don't risk that token explosion where once you get close to 80% or 70% of the limit, it starts like going all over the place. I picked it up from quite a few Anthropic employees, and from a recent conference. I forget where. I should write it down. But it's something easy that I could try that was actually quite productive. It's how I use it for writing primarily. Emails, articles, proposals, code, designs, specs, architecture, plans. It's like, here's my plan. I give it everything. Here's what we're working on. Give me suggestions. Let's iterate. Okay, I'm going to take that one. Now forget. Let's go back. And then I say, here's what I have. And have the new version. Let's continue. Here's what I'm working on. And then that way it doesn't try to sort of outsmart where we're going. It's, oh, I see now. And so like, no. It's like, just let's rewind. And like, I trust my gates and my prompts and my skills and my agents more than whatever you might have accidentally learned from talking to me for the past 20 minutes. Because it's not training. It's not supervised learning. So I would prefer it to be close to clean token context as possible beyond the essentials. So I just keep using rewind as much as possible. And it might be a hack. It might be, and also Cloud Code just removed or iterated on UltraThink. That's a sort of token heavy, sort of deep thinking mode. So these little tricks help me. They help me more than those prompt injections that were like super popular last year of pretend to be this and this and this and have an IQ of 250. That works for a while, but then it gets a little bit repetitive. It doesn't actually, if you eval it on a wide array of tasks, it doesn't actually produce more accurate results. It just helps you have a more pleasant conversation, which is not ultimately what you're there for. It's just more of this bias of, if we are going the right direction, at least you're speaking to me in a language that I like, even if you're not producing output. And it's sort of anthropomorphizing the AI, which is kind of silly. And it's just solving the problem of talking in too large batches rather than just getting it down to 1-2 lines at a time and just tactically running that loop.
You actually answered the question of first to laster. How to control slop as we have AI.
Yeah, that's how you control the slop. Yeah, you get it down to that level of just, hey, here's what I'm working on. Let's just iterate on these few lines, and then you rewind it back. If you're using Cloud Code, that was really useful to me. Once you're in the territory of, I am coding this feature, give me a plan, do the suggestions, and then you have to review 400 lines of code. That's the problem, right? So just imagine that you're gonna have to do it yourself. Start doing it yourself, and then before you hit the keyboard and start typing, just explain what you were about to type and work with it that way. Like, don't try to escape the work by explaining it at a too high level. Just imagine that you're coding, and instead of writing the code, you're explaining and you're actually driving as if you were pair programming with somebody. So just instruct the AI what to write literally and steer it somewhat. Create a function that does this or create a function that does that. And if it's longer to describe than what you're doing, write it yourself until you come to something complete. What I like to do, for example, is when I have a type that has 4 choices and I have to write a switch statement, I let the AI do that. Because obviously, why not, right? I might have a type for events. I'm writing an aggregate that will understand all events. I just ask it to explode it out for me, right? Because that is a type expansion on quite deterministic code paths, and it's a pattern that it knows. So it's like, okay, I'm building an aggregate. Here's the events. They are downstream from commands. Give me a switch statement that is fully exhaustive for this type. And I would rather describe that and have it just for me and then do not implemented, not implemented, not implemented. And I'm already test covering the one that I am implementing, have it generate that, fix it a little bit, rewind, and then I do the TDD flow normally. That's how you control slop, right? With good types, with good deterministic behavior. But if you vibe code with it and you give it a ticket, please implement this. And it's, no, that's La La Land. Sadly, that's still La La Land. And for me, the use case of doing engineering tasks without being an engineer is not even on my radar.
I actually need to go. If you like to stay, you can stay.
I'll wrap. Was a good discussion. Adrian, any preferences for next week's stream?
I should talk about AI. We haven't talked about it for a while.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't talk about AI next time because there's so much.
It's repetitive.
Yeah, for me as well. So I need to tackle, or I have tackled some things with AI in learning, coaching, and mentoring, which is an important topic in my opinion because everyone is using that, and that's a maturity phase now.
For AI coaches, you mean just getting like the easy stuff?
No, it's like people are already using AI in coaching. So
yeah, I see.
Even
so
if they don't,
self-help.
It is self-help.
Yeah.
And coaches themselves try to do that as well with custom GPTs and provide the custom GPTs by
replicating themselves.
Compressing their knowledge into the existing GPT, call their training.
I saw Kentbeck do something similar with Rent-A-Kent. Like he trained a model on his books, I think.
But there is a big issue with that because that was the biggest feedback I've got from PageBar. That is the most desired feature right now from the roadmap is to focus on AI coaching. But it is such a, I made an article about that. It is very deep. It's a very deep topic to get that done right. So that remove judgment and even get the AI to do something. I can't answer you. Please discuss that with your actual coach where you have a contract for judgment. I'm not doing judgment here. I'm just giving you a very good auto-completion for self-reflection. So you need to reduce it down to a good self-reflection because the AI is good for 2 things: getting someone into coaching and fill the gaps in between sessions. Because I even mentioned you in that article, not by name, but you are coaching a team on site, so you are way more present than most coaches I personally know. Most coaches are session-based, which is more kind of mentoring actually than coaching. But it's a little bit like that. So you have time in between sessions, but the good people want to learn constantly and consistently. They have a question right now for an issue right now, not in 1 week.
Exactly.
And very often you don't get in touch with your coach.
Part of the work that I do is actually preempting that. It's like they need to have a conversation and they're not having it. And sort of I am barging in to sort of create the space for them to prioritize the conversation more, right? Rather than waiting for a retro, rather than waiting for that thing that is scheduled in 2 weeks, to just have it now, when there's an issue with somebody or like somebody overstepped team boundaries or leadership, or maybe there was an inappropriate outburst in one of the meetings and they're waiting too long to sort of address that and it's lingering. So my role is more about the productivity of, hey, what tasks are you not taking seriously enough and they're sort of marinating in your backlog of things that you culturally need to discuss. And it's sort of, and when there's a retrospective, there's like too much stuff to talk about. So you triage and you give everybody this feeling that, there'll be one action point and 70 problems. So we're just automating this process of ignoring 69 of the other problems, which makes people hate retros and hate people, disincentivize people from talking about it and taking action on it.
Good.
We should maybe approach Nick Shumeko to plan out. Maybe it's tradition at this point that at the end of February, beginning of March, we have this sort of big TDD for front end episode. It would be good to start the logistics on that. That's sort of on my mind, and I think we did hint to Nick that we'd be interested in doing that again and start the. We haven't been very diligent on keeping up with our guests and potential guests. So at least Nick, we should plan out sooner rather than later.
Okay, I actually need to go.
Yeah.
I wish everyone a good day.
Yeah, thanks for spending the hour with us. We are keeping the streams lighter. We are actually,
but more often. So actually, I do it more often now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep up a cadence again as we had in the first year.
Yeah,
so
the platforms. It feels like the platforms caught up to us. So previously, we had to use quasi events and videos to sort of mimic the idea of us streaming and us just being a streaming pair. And I think the platforms have caught up to this kind of like not podcast, but we're actually streaming and talking with each other.
Sounds strange, but we try to be streamer now.
Yeah.
After 1,000 streams or something like that, we try to be streamer.
Yeah. So we are going away from that. What we used to have is have a LinkedIn event that had like this
event wafflers.
Event wafflers, and then they have this like huge event and agenda and blah 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 and hooks on LinkedIn and it was just such a huge admin overhead. And then we ended up
could invite actually 1,000 people, and then you saw 130 people will join, but they actually never join. So the entire mechanic behind that doesn't really work in our context. And just going online and then gathering the people as we did in the very first streams was the best choice. The actual regulars we had came from the spontaneous actions we did,
and knowing that we would be there and on Wednesday at 4 p.m., which is what we're relying on now, just doubling down on the regulars. So if you were here, Christina, Mike, Christine, Blaze, Matthew, Firster, it's the first time that I see your name. Dinesh, Muhammad, I've seen quite a few times. Thank you for being with us. I can see your names on Substack. On LinkedIn, I can only see you if you chat at least once. So that's also something that we're improving on. Thank you so much for spending the hour with us. You'll see us here again, same time, next week, Wednesday. See you then.